Good evening and welcome to Face to Face. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Niresh Aliyatambi. In exactly 11 days' time, we are all going down to vote. We're going to vote in a new president, or we'll keep the existing one, and then Sri Lankans, as usual, will think of sitting back and allowing a particular party or a particular coalition to govern. And of course, in 5 years' time, we will turn around and blame that party for whatever has transpired. But is this the system change that we really want? Isn't the system change more to do with us, with society, than just with our politicians? And to discuss this, we have with us this evening Mr. Lacille De Silva, a well-known social commentator who is no stranger to our programs, and Mr. Anuradha Wimalaratne, representing the SJB, a former provincial councillor of the Western Provincial Council. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Lacille, let me start with you. You're very vocal about the change that Sri Lanka needs to undergo. Can you speak a little bit more about this?
Actually, I have been in Parliament, not as a member of Parliament. I have been on the staff for about 37 years.
Yes, you qualified that very quickly because being a member of the staff of Parliament is an honourable position, whereas being an MP is...
So, in my case, I was a witness to most of these things. I saw how they were enacting laws. I mean, even laws that should not have been enacted. In the meantime, how they brought in various constitutions which took the country back. Now, to tell you, finally, we are bankrupt. So, you ask me...
Financially, morally, ethically?
Ethically, I mean, whatever name you call it, it's all that there. and actually, it reminds me, Henry Kissinger has gone to Bangladesh in 1971. He had said it's a basket case. Now, I would call it, but Henry Kissinger said, this is a basket case. So we have to come out of it. My biggest problem is, now, Ranil, the current head of state, does he have a vision? In my view,
he says he does.
If it is the case, he should have by now sorted it out, because there are enough and more examples. Look at India in 1991, right? They went bankrupt. They said they were even ashamed to tell the world that they were bankrupt. But unfortunately, it was the other party, Rajapaksa's, right? And having mismanaged the whole thing, they wanted to say it was bankrupt due to COVID. No. A long story coming from the 70s. There were two, it was called a twin deficit. One was budget. We were overspending. You get 100 rupees, you spend 1,000 rupees, right? That was what they did all throughout. And then thereafter, continuously borrowed from the 70s, because McNamara, who came in, prior to 70s, it had to be for a project. Now here, for your sustenance, day-to-day, whatever. So this system eventually ruined. Now, having even taken commercial loans really at very high interest, and we came to a situation we just couldn't afford. And even the monies that they had borrowed, the debt was invested unwisely. In addition, there was corruption there in it. For example, World Bank and the Oxford Union had done a research. So that was in about early 2015 or so. And they said for a kilometer, globally, the cost was $7 million. Now, in our case...
This is a highway construction.
Highway constructions, right? So, now, in our case, $15 million, 30, 45, 60, 70... Now,
we have the world's most expensive roads.
Yeah.
Sri Lankans love to say we are the world's first in this,
and we have probably got into the Guinness Book. Right? Even having, had a cabinet of ministers, half the parliament was cabinet ministers.
At one point, yes.
At one point. So this is how they have messed up, busted the whole thing up. And you all young people, I think you all have to be vocal, like what he said, not me. Because unless you tell the truth to the people, you will never be able to. I mean, it was the youngsters, even Aragale. They blamed the Aragale for all that bankruptcy and all that. No, Aragale was a spontaneous thing because people were not happy, people were angry for mismanagement. What did they say? Give us the money that they have robbed. All that. Those were the slogans. So what is important right now, look at the big picture. Basically, not to be biased towards a certain clad. Think of the general public and do what is possible. It is possible even at this moment. I don't think Ranil had done anything at all.
Anuradha, you've spent and you do spend a lot of time on the road in your political campaign now, and you're likely to spend even more time with the general election and then the other elections which are expected to follow. Anuradha, what is the pulse of the people with regard to this system change? Do they simply want to change the politicians, or is it something deeper in society? Has the public understood that they themselves need to change?
I don't really think. I have been in politics for about 15 years now, and I have been associating with our masses, basically the general public. I don't think that they really know what they want. See, there is our way of always wanting someone else to change, but we don't really want to change ourselves. So they see this whole problem or the issues that we are having is caused by someone else. To an extent, yes, but the thing is, I think the general public is to blame as well, because they have been electing these politicians, these leaders for the past, let's say the past 30, 40 years. Maybe it was corrupt, because before that, you know, I think
From about the 70s, we will say?
yeah, from both, yeah, let's say that, you know, just to be unbiased to my own party even. But people have been choosing the wrong people. They have been voting in, like, even in the past government, take the people that we call are really corrupt, and these individuals, regardless of the party, sometimes even, you know, from my party even, the most corrupt individuals have always topped the district preferential vote list, regardless of which party. And
that's an interesting point. Some of the most corrupt politicians have been
first, second, or third.
overwhelmingly elected.
First, second, third, always.
Yes, and it's not that they did so in the south or in any particular area.
Even the west.
It's all over the country.
Yeah.
This seems to happen.
Exactly. So I think it might be because of the narrow-mindedness of our people. And like Lacille was saying, like, we are more of a Eda Vela tours kind of people.
That's a good thing.
Day to day.
Day to day, right? So, I have seen good candidates being put forward by every party. Like, what people always say is, we are voting for the ones that you are putting. No, people have, all parties, you know, like even SLPP, that we keep saying corrupt, right? They have been fielding some really good candidates, but the thing is, they don't have the money or the financial capacity or the people backing them to compete with the crooked ones.
You're right. Yeah.
Right? And you look at all the lists. All the good ones are on the bottom. They are the ones who have not made it. And after that, I think giving, as you said before, giving some, like a bunch of people the government and staying back and, like not following and, like watching, like what they are doing and being uninterested for 5 years, I don't think it's the way. For a vibrant democracy to be there, people need to be involved. They need to be looking and like asking, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And if your leaders are not going the right way, everyone has to get together and get on the roads. Like what happens in Sri Lanka, as long as your guy is doing the wrong thing, no problem. Everyone else will protest and you will go protest, go against the protesters to safeguard your crooked fellow. You know what he's doing is wrong, but that is what you are doing. And the other thing is, we as a nation, we are always looking for a shortcut, no? Like bribing someone, or like even with the cops and everything, we always want the shortcut. And I think more than a system change, we as a people need to have an attitude change. Like, I think everyone needs to change for the better, instead of pointing fingers at someone else and saying, so why shouldn't I do it? Like, recently I heard this story, and apparently some gentleman had come down to get a passport for one of his children, and he had refused to do it the wrong way. And one day he had been on the queue the whole day from morning until night to get the number. Next day he had been in line, and with an, if I'm not mistaken, with an infant, right? And then after they got the picture and went home, they had gotten another call saying, the picture is not right, you have to come back. And he had gone another day for that whole process, right? Because obviously there are shortcuts. There are ways to get passports these days. Like, even though people say no, apparently there is. This is what I hear. And then when actually the father or the mother wanted to get the passport done, he had said, I'm sick of doing the right thing. Please find me another way. I'll pay whatever and get it. So yes, the system is partly to blame.
But the system is set up by us. In this case, what happens, Anuradha, is that Sri Lankans set up roadblocks within the system so that you are forced to go the wrong way. It's like if the road is blocked, you're going to get on the opposite lane and just go on that for a while and then come back to it, right? Even though you know it's the wrong thing to do. So this is what is happening.
No, but I think good analogy. But like, you can't take the same thing. See, like, my parents' company is in Japan. I studied, part of my education was from Japan. In Japan, those people are so disciplined. If the road is blocked, they will just stand and wait until it's unblocked. But the system is such, if it's blocked for some reason, the government services or the responsible services would come and quickly clear it. Best example, like when you're entering a main road from a by road, the signal lights have a sensor, right? And if you don't go close to that sensor, but you stay behind the line, Japanese always stay behind the line. If that sensor doesn't activate, the light doesn't turn green. So my mom had been driving and she had stopped way before, right? And now she's waiting. This light is not turning, and there's a huge line behind her. But no one is, using their horn or anything. About 5 minutes later, the driver of the bus behind her had got down and come and tapped and said, "Take the vehicle a little bit forward, please." Right? Didn't even honk. She took it forward. Instantly, the color changed and went. But the thing is, when it comes to government service, I think that is why in our plan, Mr. Sajith Premadasa and the SJB is actually suggesting or proposing that we go to a digitized platform for the banking sector and the government service, health sector, because that would actually eliminate, I think, 90% of corruption and all this red tape, because mostly things are delayed by government servants. Unfortunately, not everyone. There are some superb government servants that I have come across. Sometimes, like, I am like, oh my God, this
such people do exist.
They do exist, right? I'm surprised, but far and too far in between. They are there, right? But they are not given the recognition. But the others use all these red tape in the systems that have been set up just so that they can make a few bucks. If you go
Well,
and
it's not
tell
a few bucks.
well, not a few bucks,
it's
right?
a lot of
yeah,
bucks.
if you go and ask them to do something, they're like, no, circular says no. You slide something in, circular goes out, your job is done. Like, see, I think these are the things that we need to change. And even that money, if you digitize these things, we can monitor what people are making and what they are spending. And all their black money will be really hard to spend. And we can use that revenue to actually increase the salaries of the government servants, and they will hopefully give a better service.
Lacille, my great fear,
Yeah.
having lived in this country for more than half a century, been born here, my great fear is that Sri Lankans are going to go and vote saying this party will get rid of all the corruption in the country, eradicate corruption. That's the catchphrase now. And then that's on Saturday, and on Sunday celebrate that their man won.
Have me prize.
Or they'll drown their sorrows. But then on Monday, they'll go to the school principal and bribe that guy to get their child into that particular school. Along the way, they'll bribe the police, the traffic policeman, and they won't understand that the system change needs to begin at home.
I think Anuradha gave a very good example what happened to her mum, right, in Japan. Now look at our system here. What we saw long years ago, actually that was such a peaceful country, principled people. I mean, they didn't give that kind of bribes. Or my father, we have fairly an old house, a big house in Hikkadua. I mean, we had 9 children in our family, right? And my father had 11 children, but he had a bigger land and all that later. So now my bag, in the center hall, actually the wall behind was fractured, and since it is an old house, it had like mud looking whatever this bricks, right? Then, I mean, I don't want to say that what my father said, but I think if I don't say that, it's not correct. If referring to my father, if he wants, he can bring even a cement truckload here and get this repaired. He said no, I don't do that kind of things. Actually, there were people who didn't give bribes, who didn't accept bribes. I mean, system was so good. Now, in the 70s, Albert Silva in Gaul, a member of parliament, he had a oil cart, in the sense kerosene oil cart, which used to go, with the bell and all that, for selling kerosene oil. For having had that license, he lost his seat. That was one. Since then, we have never seen an MP who was punished. Now see, recently a man brought in gold, and I can relate number of other stories where they abused. So basically it has to start from the top. It has to start from the top.
So what you're saying is, where our leaders lead, the general public will follow.
Not that they follow. I mean, there was no choice. Now see, to tell you frankly, I know how people struggle to get their children admitted to schools. Those days, it was not the case. You can even, you can go to the nearest school. There were teachers and all that, because education from the GDP, minimum 4 to 5% was given. Now just 1.1, right? Look at, having given all that, look at the number of vehicles ministers use, the most expensive cars and all that, right? So you have to curtail expenditure and develop the thinking pattern of the people, give them all the knowledge. Now, one of the professors in Bangladesh, and he is now in US, he had said, human being is the engine of change. Give him strength, give him knowledge, give him skills, right? That was happening even in our country till about the 70s. Now, it's not the case, I am telling you. So basically, you have to look at from the point of, to give people whatever the facilities and all that, and then develop them. If you develop them, I think things will turn, because our country, Now look at even places like Anuradhapura. I mean, I personally think those massive structures without any modern kind of equipment and all that couldn't have constructed if there was no proper management.
True.
I always think like that, right? Here we had those systems were broken down from the 70s. I would say if you break down the public sector, that's the end of the country. That is what happened to us in 1970. Abolished Public Services Commission, Judicial Services Commission, and then the Senate. Actually, it paved the way for politicians to plant people in. And in 78, constitutionally, President was given powers to appoint the secretaries. So basically, there is no public sector right now. The public sector is owned by the politicians, and he runs it the way they want. If the bribes are, if people are taking bribes, I mean, stop it. President has the right to say, do it. I mean, if he doesn't want to stop, do you think we can stop? That is the problem. Basically, the public sector institutions are there. Maybe the police, bribery commission, this, that, and all that are there. So having had all that, if you can't stop, I mean, that is not the fault of the people. People will also like, now, to say there was a minister who wanted a bribe from a Japanese firm. He lost his seat. Ultimately, back again, he's in parliament, in the cabinet. So when you permit that kind of thing, I mean, even the people always, right, maybe find the easier way to make a little faster buck. So naturally,
when your bosses are corrupt, you wonder, so why shouldn't I, get a piece of the action?
Look at people like Lee Kuan Yew. Then it was like our country then, right? How did he discipline the country? Rule of law. I mean, that's the way he changed the whole thing. So all what we need is something similar.
We are in conversation with Lacille De Silva and Anuradha Wimalaratne. Don't go away. We are going to cross over for a short commercial break. We'll be right back.
A trusted place for your fixed deposit. Valuable FD, a symbol of stability.
Don't miss the
TV1. TV for life.
Today is the 9th of September 2024, and starting things on a positive note, the Sri Lankan cricket team achieved a rare feat today. And now, at the same time, Sri Lanka's human rights is also on the spotlight. Now, to give us a brief on this, we have today Jamal from Lanka. Jamal, I believe you're working on a very important story today, but I'm going to have to shift your attention here. So what can our audience expect on our news bulletin today?
Certainly, Gerard. Like you mentioned, Sri Lanka cricket achieved a very rare feat today, winning in England against England for the first time in a decade. And it was mainly thanks to the pace attack of Sri Lanka and also Pathum Nissanka, opener Pathum Nissanka, who carried his bat throughout the innings in the second innings with 127 runs, guiding Sri Lanka to victory. We know Sri Lanka didn't start off great, but they reassessed their performance and eventually won the third and final match of the three-match test series. Although they lost the test series, this was a significant feat after they won in the Kensington Oval in London earlier today. Coming to what you mentioned regarding the UNHRC, the 57th session of the UN Human Rights Council is currently being held in Geneva, and Volker Turk, who is the UNHRC chief, mentioned Sri Lanka's human rights record, and he specifically mentioned about the mass protests that erupted 2 years ago. And he said, although those mass protests were held to put an end to corruption and the abuse of power and democratic reforms, many of those demands are yet to be fulfilled. He also shed light on the progress of the investigation into the 2019 Easter Sunday attacks. We will bring you all of those details. In fact, the Sri Lankan representative's reply to the UN Human Rights Councillor's response, or the report as well, will be mentioned during the news at 9. So stay tuned. We will bring you all of these stories and much more from here at home and around the world at 9 tonight on Primetime News.
Yes, thank you, Jamal, for that informative brief. And just like Jamal concluded, for a comprehensive report on these stories and much more in the local arena, tune into our Primetime News at 9 on TV1.
TV1. TV for life.
Face to face, we are in conversation with Anuradha Wimalaratne and Lacille De Silva. Gentlemen, and I'm going to pose this question to Anuradha. You mentioned digitization, and many of the presidential candidates have been speaking about this, that this is the answer to corruption. Have everything digital. That way, you're taking the corrupt humans out of the loop and placing machines which will do the job. Or at least it's from you to a machine, there's no corrupt human in between. Is this the answer, Anuradha?
Naresh, I think, like, it's not taking the corrupt humans out and giving it to a machine. It's just I think monitoring the what's going on would be easier on a digitized platform. There will always be people who is finding holes to wiggle through, but this has worked in quite a few countries in eliminating corruption. Like, I think one of the best examples would be India. Now, like, it's so hard for them to do cash transactions, and even if they do, they're having a huge problem actually utilizing that ill-earned gains. So digitizing things would actually be a huge part of the solution. But after that, we need to start looking at other things as well. We need to see why people in this country is getting pushed towards corruption, trying to make an extra buck, and because there are other factors that affect these things. Like, even with the government service, Lacille just said that because of the breaking down of the commissions in the 70s.
Yeah, the commissions, and basically the politicization, and then
that's the thing, because even our government service has become basically a rubber stamping institution for
because even the public servants can't survive. They'll be kicked out if they don't sort of
exactly. The reason we can't pay the public sector is because it has been flooded. We have, I think, almost 1.6 million government service,
which is really too much.
Really too much, right? I think we need to go for at least immediate 30% cut in this number.
More than that, if
possible. But immediately, I think we should.
I mean, without cutting down, you have to look at things so that there will be other consequences too.
No, because like, see, what Mr. Sajith Premadasa is proposing is gradually take them out, give them necessary training so that like they can be utilized in other fields, and or give them like a capital to training and capital to start their own businesses. That is part of the 1 million startup program.
But
you can't just take them out.
If I can make a comment there, although there are 1.6 million public servants, there are many key job roles where there aren't enough people. You take train drivers, for example. Teachers, right? Trained to teach rather than just having an arts degree from a university, but people who actually have been trained to teach. We don't have enough. So this 1.6 million, surely some of them can be trained,
Exactly. We can actually do that. Like change their skill set and better utilize them, and maybe make the already existing employees more efficient, give them more training. There are a lot of things.
I think like what he said, basically, now see, look at the public sector. There may be enough and more ladies who could be easily converted or transferred to as teachers and fill those gaps. There may be science graduates, there may be arts graduates, there may be all kinds of competent people, and they'll be even happier to serve in their local school without going far away for various other government odd jobs,
And
so
like 9 to 5 job and thankless.
Yeah, if you really look at the whole thing analytically, probably there can be so many other things. Now see, look at the police. You have only about 85,000 policemen, right? You need maybe double at this moment, right? Now, I mean, whatever said and done, can't you find a right type of people so that they could be absorbed from the public sector itself? Actually they should be put to better use. I mean, sometimes we talk about the problems, they are not being used. So the public sector, I mean, there's a thing called joint up government systems. Basically the whole system needs to be supervised from the top to the bottom. It should be linked up and it should be made more efficient. Unfortunately the biggest problem is you pay. That happens even to the politicians. I mean, you can't probably do what is right as a politician. Now, there again, there's another problem. Politicians must create policies and do the kind of other part of supervision. The public sector employees must expedite all that effectively. So this is the problem. The whole thing has been sort of, I mean, it's a jumble. You have to.
But Lacille, hasn't this jumble of bribery and corruption, hasn't it also made Sri Lanka non-competitive?
You're right.
We seem to,
problem, yeah.
Right. I remember when the free trade agreement was signed with Singapore.
Yeah.
Everybody in this country was frightened silly that the Singaporeans would come in here and we won't be able to compete with them. And it's true, we can't compete with the Singaporeans. But why can't we?
No, that is because now.
And now it's the Indians. We're frightened that the Indians will come in here and swallow us up. But the fact is that we don't have that work ethic.
No, the whole problem, that again was the fault of the government. Because look at in 1977, right? Actually, till 1977 we had salt corporation, we had sugar corporation, plywoods corporation, this, that and all that. More than all that, now paper corporation, everything was there. In addition, in 70, Dr. Nempera, thanks to him, he started projects, small industries in every whatever division secretariat. And there's a former civil servant, Dr. Gavin Karatha, he had written a lot about those. And that was working smoothly. Actually, that was to sort out this unemployment problem too. So all that ultimately got wiped out with the open economic policies. But India didn't do that way completely. They didn't open up the whole thing, somewhat regulated. So everything here was due to the fault of the governance, whatever the politicians, I would say. I mean, not that I am angry and I am pointing at politicians always, but they were responsible there. Look at the other thing. Now see, if you come to power this time, right, then he will come to power next time. He will wipe out and change the whole thing. You can't do that. In India in 1950 they established a planning commission, right? Now in 2015 they created another one, National Institute of Transformation. So this is the thinking. That's why they developed.
Yeah, that's actually very true, because
that's the way
our policies and plans change every 5 years. Like when the parliament changes, it changes.
So,
power shifts.
And
in Japan actually has a 100-year plan. And that they are going towards.
Correct.
And that's actually powered by their public sector. Politicians get to make small adjustments.
Correct.
But general direction is the same.
And once
we don't even
plan.
have a plan after day after tomorrow.
Yeah,
we are like
we have no plan whatsoever. Ask Ranil, right? He says that he has sorted this mess. Basically, have we paid the loans? No. When we start paying loans, I mean, you will have to go through your
Yeah, true,
right.
true, true.
I mean, so naturally they have to be truthful. They have to be honest. Now, Roosevelt in 1929, when there was a economic crisis, that was depression. Actually, there was a committee of specialists appointed, and there were so many new things than they had done. Right. So likewise, they sorted out they improved the whole situation, and there were three important things. They said, first give them relief, then recovery, then reform. Have we done that? Have we given relief to the people? Have we given relief to the industries?
So what you're saying, Lacille, inferring is that the current president is going to, if he is not re-elected, he will be leaving Sri Lanka with a bigger mess than...
I mean, not only him, down the line for the last, since 2009, right, after having ended the war, I don't say after winning the war, after having ended the war, what happened in Japan, right? It was like a phoenix, a bird, rose up. And General Douglas MacArthur was
after
entrusted,
World War II.
After
Yes.
World War II, Douglas MacArthur was given to develop constitution, all that, right? They did that. Actually, we had all those better than Japan then, because they say they were $90 per capita, and in our country it was 18. I don't believe that, because they were crushed to the ground level. They had to wake up or get up, from nowhere.
Yeah. At one point, I think they were just, like boiling and eating grass.
Yeah,
so.
they had they had no food, they had no employment, they had no industries. Everything had to be restarted. All what we had at that time was completely, mismanaged. Go to Japan, go to Korea. That was a development story again. So having had all those things, actually every crisis is a blessing in disguise if we don't make use of this crisis, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And Niresh, actually, it's not it is that Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe has left this country in a worse situation than when he accepted this.
Even the loans, for
yeah,
that
I
matter.
think we were in about 80 billion in debt when he took over. Now we are over $100 billion in debt.
I have the details with me.
Yeah, and he has actually, now his slogan in this election is I ended queues. And then people actually cheer for that. I don't know, paid.
But there are queues. There are passport queues.
Yeah. There are passport queues.
And somebody died in a 3-day queue in the port.
Yeah.
One of the drivers, and it's shocking that he was actually in line inside the port for 3 days to get out with his merchandise. That's what the media report said.
And people actually cheer for this, and even the so-called intelligent, educated elite of Colombo, they are made the economy better, ended queues. So we were in queues for 3 days.
That's a sad state of affairs.
Yeah,
I'm sorry for disturbing you.
Exactly. Right? I'm like, oh my God, you guys are supposed to be the smart ones. How did he end queues? Did any foreign investments come into the country? FDIs? No. Did corruption end? No. Did any loss-making government institutions start making profit? No. What he did was he stopped paying the loans and increased taxes.
Yeah.
Right? And
people go through all the hardships because they can't even have a square meal.
Exactly. And the biggest problem is our people forget. They forget, how much a gas cylinder was 2 years ago. They forget how much our electricity bills were 2 years ago. Right? And about 3 million in this country was below the poverty line, and they were not getting enough meals. And now it has come up to 7 million. Right? Now 4 million more people are starving. Things have not become better. But I need to add, Lacille, but I'm sorry, but the thing is, not only people in power, but the people who have been in the opposition has been part of this problem as well. In the blueprint program, Mr. Kabir Hashim did a superb analysis of how we got here in this past 76 years. If I go through very few that I can remember, because I didn't really have time to be there for the whole speech, he said that JVP has been equally or a big part of this 76-year curse. Apparently they were making some road from Putlam or something, JVP had come out and said this is there to land American airplanes, so that had to be stopped. It was like for tourist purpose. Then when Mr. Jayawardena came up with free trade zones, Rohana Vijayveera had come up and said,
and the medical faculty
when we get power, we are going to throw all these investors out without any compensation. Half of the foreign companies had left. Toyota, Nissan and Mazda had tried to open plants in Sri Lanka. JVP had come and protested and said, no, we are going to burn, and they got scared. They went to India, Thailand and I think Malaysia, and there so many jobs have been created and so much billions of dollars are coming into the economy because of that. And this Ragama, I think Mr. Jayawardena, a non-profit private medical college. And JVP had actually burned this down in 88, 89. And Mr. Mahathir Mohamad had taken that whole faculty into Malaysia. And they are having one of the most successful medical colleges there. Apparently, every year, 120 to 150 Sri Lankan students go there. Same thing with Saitam, right? And when Monash City tried to come over here, they did the same thing. And now, and it's the same group of people, right? Handunnetti was there, Lal Kanta was there in 88, Vijita Herath was there. They have just changed the symbol and the color of their flag.
Yeah, that is true.
And they are saying, no, we are a different group. I'm not even going to touch on the fact, the murders that they did. And the biggest thing is, forget all the, intelligent people, the monks and everything. The 60,000 youth of this country that could have gotten us into a much better place in the past 30 years. They died because of this. And now they are pretending to be that they are all new and all is, hunky-dory. It's not. It's the same group of people. Dr. Harini and them, they are good. I do accept that. But the thing is, they are not going to have a place in this government. Yesterday, Mr. Handunnetti was doing a speech, and it was on Sirasa News. He was saying, he's doing it to the masses, right? He never says that in English. It's like Ranil or Sajit is saying that NPP and JVP policies are different. There is no more JVP policies. It's like, read our 233 page book. It's NPP and JVP policies are the same.
Actually,
right?
In
Sinhalese, no, I think basically it's not only one party. People who have been in power and has been in the opposition, they are both to be blamed, because Ranil Wickremesinghe has been the leader of the opposition for about 30-40 years, and having a weak opposition has created a government that did most of this. Because a strong opposition is actually part of having a vibrant democracy in a country. So,
Lacille, countries go bankrupt all the time. Not the well-run countries, but a good 60-70 countries in the world have gone bankrupt, and they have recovered. And it was never a question of whether they would recover. It was a question of
when,
how fast would they recover. But we seem to be stuck. There seems to be a lack of faith in our recovery because we have so many fundamental problems underlying everything.
That is basically because they do everything behind the curtain. What I personally think is they should expose all that, the problem that they are facing. Who are the debtors, this, that and all that. Now, there were reports that the parliament wanted. I don't think they got all that, right? I think leader of the opposition have been screaming that they needed all the reports and all that. Actually, everything needs to be tabled in parliament. Why are they doing behind closed doors? Everything in a democracy needs to be transparent. The biggest problem is in a democracy, violations of human rights, lacking transparency, and lack rule of law, and ultimately destroy the democratic government. So what we need even to sort this mess out, look at India, how they sorted it out. Manmohan Singh in 1991 as finance minister, Narasimha Rao, you know, it was a superb job done. There is enough and more you know, reading material in the web, right? Look at even USA. Roosevelt planned it in such a way, appointed a special committee, and like what I said, those three: relief, recovery and reform. I mean, massive development after that. In our case, we have not exposed all that to the country. That is the problem. And let people decide by, you know, Ranil Wickremesinghe might appoint, like in the central bank case, his own 3 guys or whatever. No. It has to be independent committees. But unfortunately, in our country, independent committees are also politicized to that extent. So it should not be the case. Unless we become truly a democratic country, because that should be the aim even at this election, right? We would at least, you know, very kindly request, whether it is NPP or JVP, it doesn't matter, right? Honor democratic principles, and what we should strengthen is the democracy. If people have any kind of doubt or whatever, right, think in terms of all those things, decide how to vote in favor of democracy. That's what we should do ultimately, because that's the most important.
And hopefully an independent public prosecutor.
Yeah.
We are suggesting that.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Right, hold that thought, because we need to go in for another short commercial break. We'll be right back with Mr. Lacille De Silva and Anuradha Wimalaratne.
TV1. TV for life.
Cool and real-time data.
Catch every detail with expert analysis. Answer to your questions and the unexpected uncovered.
Stay ahead of the curve with the latest technology. One update at a time throughout the day.
Feel the pulse of the election.
On your screens. Stay connected and informed.
With Newsfirst.
Sri Lanka decides.
Sri Lanka decides.
Welcome back. We are with Mr. Lacille De Silva and Mr. Anuradha Wimalaratne. Anuradha, you were talking about transparency when we went in for the commercial break. Please continue on that train of thought on the need for transparency.
Well, I think, you know, like as Mr. Lacille brought it up, people need to know what's going on. And again, you know, like I might be, you know, like what do you call, beating on the same drum, but digitization would actually help in that aspect as well. Government procurements, government spending, it should be digitized and made available for the public.
Yes.
And by public should make use of it. Like, unlike, you know, what, you know, we are used to doing, right, okay, you know, browse through and, you know, without doing that. but that should be available, and like there would be independent, knowledgeable people like Lacille who would actually take the time and go through and point it out. Right now that information is not available. Easter Sunday attack has been sealed, and the bond scam, there are pages missing that's still being held back. Mr. Premadasa is saying that he will release all that to public, which would be a great thing, but transparency must be there for a country to move forward. Otherwise, this corruption will never end.
And right to information is a right, Article 14 of the Constitution. But Ranil Wickremesinghe is the one who added 19th Amendment. He himself, there are problems. We don't get mostly, even for RTI requests. Why? Is it right to information?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, this is a joke in a democratic country like ours. Only the name board, if that is the case, that should not be the way.
I think this has been like the whole theme of Mr. Wickremesinghe throughout, right? When he's in the opposition, he talks about, he's very democratic, right? As soon as he gets power, he becomes a dictator. He's like, shut up, sit down. I know I've been doing this since 1977 because I have taken that lot from him. So,
yes, the famous sit down that
I brought you to Parliament.
In Parliament. That was a particularly obnoxious episode. So what you're saying, Anuradha, is that there has to be a behavior change among our political leaders as well. Their public behavior needs to be more refined, more gentlemanly, more fair,
and more involved, with what their leaders are doing.
And set an example. More importantly,
No, but I'm pretty sure that people are, I think they have learned their lesson, and they are going to elect Mr. Premadasa. But the thing is, then there's going to be a general election. If they keep sending the same bunch, because then Mr. Premadasa will have to work with what he's given, right? So, and we will have to.
Let me ask you, as a representative of the SJB, when the nomination list comes out for the general election, are we likely to see an SJB list which has a large number of new faces?
Yeah, definitely there will be a large number of new faces, and
but this means that you have to drop some of the old faces.
Not necessarily, but people will have a good mix of selection, and they should figure out who should be leading or who should be working with Mr. Premadasa, because now I think it's enough. I think they need to look at all parties and their list, not only ours, because there has to be a good mix of parties for the democracy to work. Giving everything to one party, we have seen it does not work.
Too much of power.
Too much of power is not a good thing for any party. And in those teams, in those lists, even in ours, there will be people that we are compelled to give nominations, and there would be
those those decisions should be finally taken by the people, not to send them to Parliament.
Exactly. Don't say you put them on the list, so we voted. Right? Take responsibility, be involved. Look at who you are voting for.
Lacille, let's talk about the 2/3 majority. Whenever Sri Lanka's Parliament has had a 2/3 majority with one party, we've ended up in disaster.
You're right, exactly. You're right.
I mean, if you go back to Mrs. B's government, and then
even Bandaranaike,
JR's government, and
77,
and
Chandrika, for that matter. Now
Chandrika didn't have 2/3.
No, but she got as president 61%, 61 or 62%, right? That's the highest so far. Now, having given so many assurances, abolition of presidency, all that. Unfortunately, all that didn't happen. People expected all those changes, having given them the vote. So this time also, that should be the way. The leaders must honor their promises. Leaders should honor their promises. Ultimately, if they don't honor the promises, they will create the worst situation than at present, because actually now people hate. That's why they go, you know, with a kind of a wave. Right? Because that's out of anger.
I mean,
we
can't not really thinking straight.
Really thinking, yes.
But Lacille, can the situation get worse?
You know, people, like what you said, they should act very wisely, very intelligently, very, very cautiously, because the most important thing is don't give in for your emotions and all that, right? Don't give too much. We have been doing that, and ultimately we say "Kape karume, karume nebe ape eka chande dila vadi balaya dila tiyena." You know, I mean, we are given too much of votes, so don't do that. I mean, give it so that they might also have to debate all that in Parliament and then come to conclusions, in the sense consensus. So what is important is, the most important thing is, it is the people again, like what you said, right? But people also have a responsibility. Again, politicians have a bigger responsibility to give or fulfill the assurances and all that, and take the country to the kind of goals that they.
But that's like. Depends on the people that who the people give the power to. I know you are a big advocate for abolishing the executive presidency, and I'm totally there with you. One person should not have that much power. But taking that and giving it to the Parliament, I am a little reluctant, because I have seen the parliaments that these people have been electing.
No,
right?
because you know, Westminster system has two things. Actually, it is called Westminster Parliamentary Model and Whitehall Governance System, that is administrative model. You know, so for both these, you have to have the intellectuals. You shouldn't bring fools to Parliament by the vote and by the by your whatever the list, right? Nomination. Look at the nominations list given by members of Parliament, by the leaders. Actually, leaders of parties are responsible. They have ultimately brought in people. Now say
even the national list.
No. Even the nomination list, right? X is the Prime Minister or the President, right? Or X is the leader of the party. He wants people who will look after him even if he robs. Similarly, the other way about, when the others rob, the leader looks after. So that should not be the game. What I say is, there has to be a system where you bring in intellectuals, because even legislature needs people who can definitely go and study legislation and then debate and pass, right? But here, I always quote this. Look at Johnston one day said, no, if ape khande dunno tapi ata usano. That is not what is expected from a member of Parliament. So they have disgraced, and that's why the country is in big trouble. So what I am trying to tell you, please always remember, both sides have responsibility. Party leaders to give nominations to the right people, not to the rogues again. Right? Again, whatever said and done, even if they have been compelled to give it, then the people must decide not to send Parliament to the rogues to the Parliament. So this is exactly what is.
And we are almost out of time. Anuradha, the final word from you.
Final words would be, I would like to ask people to, you know, as Lacille said, don't act out of anger or emotion. Look at who you are going to vote for and how their past actions have been, and what are the changes that they are suggesting. And they might be really nice and, you know, like very lucrative, but you know, see whether they can be realistically achieved, and whether they have the experience and the people behind it, the team behind it, who can affect that change and do what's best for the country. Don't be emotional. Pick the right candidate, at least in this election. Thank you.
And that's it from us for tonight. My thanks to Lacille De Silva and Anuradha Wimalaratne. Gentlemen, it's been an engrossing conversation. And thank you to you at home for watching. Don't go away, the news is up next. Have a good evening.